Good morning, and welcome to the Boonafide Experience podcast. I am your host, Kyle. As many of you call me Boona, or if you follow me on social media, it's at Boonafide Gaming. Y'all, I hope you had a fantastic week. Welcome to Friday. Welcome to episode number 39 of the podcast. It's crazy to think that we're this far, and I really feel that we're just getting started. Today, we have none other than Jess Brohard. She's an esports caster, freelance content creator, and podcast show host. She's mainly known for her work in the CDL, streams almost daily on Twitch, as well as hosts a show based on mental health in the gaming community. This is a fantastic episode, and I'll be honest, after listening back to it, found myself being more and more inspired. The amount of gems that are dropped in here are really bar none. It's really cool to see her journey, how even some of the toughest moments really led to her career and where she's at today. And on top of it, she also overcame alcoholism right in the middle of building an extremely successful career. I'm not going to tell her story for you. I'm going to go ahead and let her do that by clicking play and starting the show here. Good afternoon, Jess. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for asking me to be here.
Absolutely. What are you up to this Sunday besides this podcast?
Playing Skyrim. You interrupted a very busy day of just literally playing Skyrim, reinstalled it the other day, and have put probably 15 hours into it over the last 2 or 3 days.
I'm terribly sorry, but I really appreciate the level of commitment that you have to do this. So I thank you so much for sacrificing your time.
Such a sacrifice, but it's okay.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for coming on. It's a pleasure to have you here. So, this is an esports podcast where I gather people on from all over the industry to share their story, their experience, who they are, how they've gotten here, and kind of
Mhm.
where they're going, So, kind of tell the audience a little about who are you?
Yeah, so my name is Jess. As a profession, I'm an esports event host. I've been doing that for a while now. I got started way back in, yeah, I'll do this little kind of elevator pitch of
Yeah.
how I started. So I started back in 2011, very small scale. I wanted to get into it. So I started a YouTube channel where I kind of taught myself how to host. Sort of freelanced around for a couple years before I had what I considered to be my big break, which was when I got a job offer to be Curse's video host. So I did
Kidding.
that for just over a year from about March 2013 through June 2014. I was working full time for Curse, hosting videos. And then while I was at Curse is when I discovered esports and live event stuff. And that was kind of where my passion went at that time. So I transitioned, got myself an agent, transitioned to doing live stuff, starting with some Dota stuff, and then kind of branched out from there, worked my way up. Most recently, I've been hosting for Call of Duty. So for 2 years, I was signed on with the Call of Duty World League to be there. I think my job title was technically sideline correspondent, which
Okay.
meant that I did a ton of different things. The primary thing I did was the post-match interviews up on the stage. So that's another thing you could call me, was the stage host. But I think Activision Blizzard called me sideline correspondent or something like that. I also did open bracket coverage. And then coming into this season or this last season, I guess, that is over now,
Yeah.
when they franchised into the CDL for the Modern Warfare season, I was not brought back on in my same capacity, but I still have had the fantastic opportunity to do a lot of freelancing for Activision Blizzard, like hosting the Black Ops Cold War
Yeah.
multiplayer reveal, hosting numerous of the Call of Duty Challenger League events, excuse me, which of course the Challengers League is the amateur Call of Duty scene officially supported by Activision Blizzard, and then other little bits and bobs here and there.
That's awesome. I mean, that's quite a that's quite a history. So I love to get into that.
Yeah, sure.
So you mentioned, you mentioned 2011. I want to wind the clocks back even further. Growing up, when it came to gaming, what was the first game that really got you immersed?
Ooh, there are many that I can think of that stand out throughout my life.
Mhm.
Because let's see, I remember one of the first really awesome gaming experiences I had was when my sister and I got our Nintendo 64, and just Super Mario 64. I just remember that standing out as one of my favorite games of all time. Something about that game just captivated me. And
Yeah.
then later on, when I got to college, is when I really started PC gaming. Because I was more of I would kind of play anything. And then when I got to college is more when I more got into competitive gaming as well as PC gaming. So that was kind of my first Call of Duty experience was Modern Warfare 2 while I was in college. I did play on the
Hey,
Xbox, but
me
then
too.
everything else I played on PC. And TF2 and Left 4 Dead also, because I've always been a pretty big Valve fan. So TF2 and Left 4 Dead were two that like really
Yeah.
um gave me that bug for like competitive gaming and like PC gaming as well.
That's awesome. I feel like I was the only child on the planet, or at least I felt that way, who never owned an N64.
Mm.
I had the Super Nintendo. That was actually my first console.
See, I skipped the Super Nintendo.
Got
So
it. See, yeah, I went from SNES to then I went to GameCube. That was kind of like,
okay. Oh,
yep, SNES,
we
GameCube, then
that's
Xbox.
you did the exact opposite because I was NES, N64,
Got
Wii. So I
it.
skipped the SNES and the GameCube. I had a GameCube later. Like in college, I ended up
Yeah.
getting a GameCube. But yeah, I didn't have one when they first came out. It's a great console.
I
I
was
really regret skipping it. It's a fantastic console.
I was literally about to say it's one of the most underrated consoles. I mean, even from design to the games, to like, because
Yeah.
that was the
It has a
first.
handle on
Yeah,
it.
and they
Like
made the small discs. Like that shit was so
yes.
cool.
Yes. Yeah.
That's awesome. Because like I remember as a kid, I always went over to my buddy's house to play N60, like the not only play Super Mario 64, but also GoldenEye. Like that was like my
Yes. Yep.
classic.
Yep.
Classic. No, that's
Yep.
really cool. So you mentioned, you like Modern Warfare was your first game. Was that, and you mentioned competitive play. Did you compete in GB leagues? Did you
Oh,
compete?
no.
Got it.
No, I wasn't, like, competitive at all, like so it was while I was in college, around the same time that I was playing, like, Modern Warfare 2 was, around the same time I was actually getting involved with the PMS clan and the
Mhm.
Frag Dolls,
I
actually,
remember
so
them. I remember them. Back in Halo
yeah.
2. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. So for me, it was more of the like women in gaming aspect than the competitive gaming aspect. I was interested in competitive gaming, but I was no good myself. I wasn't interested in actually competing myself. I
Yeah.
always like to go to, I'm from Columbus, Ohio, so there was always an MLG
Oh
Columbus,
yeah. Oh yeah.
and especially because I think at the time I was going to Ohio State, and then so the convention center is not far at all from where Ohio State University
Got it.
is. So I would always go to the MLG Columbus and like watch other people competing, and when I was involved with the frag dolls, same thing. It was by the time I was sort of like trying out to become a frag doll, they were no longer because when they started back in like 2004 or whenever they started, they
Yep.
were competing on like Rainbow Six and I think Halo and a couple other titles. By the time I got involved with them, they were no longer like competitive. They were more kind of a marketing team for
Got
Ubisoft.
it. Got it.
But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I remember like I don't. So my like little history of the game is like I had a love for these games, but I never was really immersed in the community, and like all I knew is like I
Hmm.
remember hearing about PMS, and that was
Okay.
that was one of the in Halo that was dominant because like to your like to the women in gaming aspect, like we're just now getting to the point where it's more inclusive today, but like especially back then it was just like whoa.
Yeah. Well, these days, the nice thing is these days you don't like back then, the reason I gravitated so strongly toward other female gamers is because you kind of had to put the qualifier on of female gamer.
Yeah,
These days, like gaming is so ungendered. And I mean, it should have been back then as well, but
right.
just because there were so many fewer women in games, there were so many fewer, it seems like girls and women that played video games that like now it's like totally not a big deal. Like a lot of women play video games, a lot of girls play video games. It's just like not a big deal anymore, but back
Yeah.
then it was like you stood out more if you were a female gamer.
Exactly. Well, I mean, so let me ask you this: like, as a as a woman, do you think that just as many women played back then, and they were just kind of too like, I don't want to say scared, but like
Yeah.
too like shy to admit that, just because of the
That
stigma?
that's a really good question. I wonder about that a lot. I think it's a couple different things. I think that there weren't quite as many.
Yeah.
I think that to your point, there were definitely a lot of women, I'm sure, who were like in the closet.
Yeah.
Just because like to give an example, I remember when I was a child and I would play like I remember going to one of my friend's birthday parties and we were like, it was her 10th birthday party. We were in fifth grade and we were all playing Mario Kart and Mario Party on
hmm
the
hmm
N64.
hmm
And we just had a blast. And then the next year we got to middle school. And all of a sudden, like all these girls that I'm like, I was at your birthday party playing video games with you that you wanted to do for your birthday. And now you're acting like you've never touched a game in your life. And you're acting like
Got it.
I'm the weird one for liking video games and anime and Sailor Moon. And
Yeah.
it was just so bizarre to me. And that I really like, I don't know if it was that particular group of friends that I was with that thought like, oh, boys won't like me if I play video games. Or I honestly don't even know what it was. But I think it was
Yeah.
there was a lot more of like a stigma. I think it was less kind of acceptable for because it was more like, oh,
Yeah.
video games are a boys thing.
Mhm.
And then so I think that there probably were fewer female gamers, and those who were like a little less out about it. But
Yeah. Yeah, I've always wondered that, because it's just like I see so many now, and like and I see so many now, and it's and especially because I also credit that like we didn't have the help of the internet back then, like
yeah.
we didn't have the power of the internet, we didn't really know, and I mean with me the one of the reasons why Halo 2 was so special to me was because like that was the first because I was a console gamer literally up until like 2 years ago, and it's
Mm,
like that was the first time that this literally brought people from all over the world together, although it wasn't
mhm.
video, although we weren't really like hanging out on these in the like we do on Twitter, but like it was just such a monumental thing. Like, wow, there's other people like me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
because it was the same thing in high school. Like I even as a guy, like I never really felt part of the in crowd because it was like I wasn't a jock.
Mhm.
I wasn't an athlete. I wasn't like in choir. I wasn't in band. There was not really a whole lot of things that I was a part of, and like I just
Mm.
wanted to talk about the dope double kill or triple kill that I got on Halo, but I
Yeah.
never felt like I could really even talk about that.
Yeah, and then you find the internet and you're like, "Oh my gosh, all these people who care what I have to
Right.
say when I'm going off getting all excited about this achievement that I got or this part that I beat or whatever. These
Exactly.
people legitimately care."
Right. People don't look down on it. They actually
Yeah.
are intrigued and they're
They're
interested
not
and they're
like,
like,
"Oh, that's how you spend your time," because 'cause they're doing the same thing.
right. And I think even then to show just the progress that we made is like, even for guys back then, it was just, video games were for basement dwellers, and you never did anything with your
Mhm.
life. And it was like there was just
Mhm.
this like on top of everything, that was just such a and that's still a conversation today,
Yeah.
unfortunately. You know.
Yeah. It's getting like I love that is one thing I love is that video games are getting way more like mainstream. They are
Yeah.
mainstream now. They
Yeah.
just are. It's not
Yeah.
that they're getting mainstream. They just are mainstream. Celebrities play them, like they're in pop culture. We've had
Mhm.
several video game movies or movies about video games.
Yeah.
So that stigma is of the like unwashed smelly gamers kind of being taken away.
Sometimes you still got to remind gamers to shower, but the stigma's
Yes,
going
some
on.
of them, which is a people thing, not a gamer thing. I would like to think
Fair.
that
Yeah.
even if those same people take away the games and they would still be, like, not bathing, like,
Yeah.
not know how to talk to people.
Yeah.
Gaming, it's just like we were talking about, like, alcoholism and stuff like that. I
Mhm.
don't think the gaming is the issue. I think it's the person is the issue. They just happen to pick gaming as their hobby.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And some people just choose to like live it a little bit more extreme than others. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, you mentioned alcoholism. Like I wanna touch on this subject. So you know, how long have like for those who don't know, you are so like you're a member of. Well, we won't get into that, but like you are sober.
Yes.
How long have you been sober? What has your journey been like through that?
Yeah, for sure. So I stopped drinking. So October 22nd, 2018 was my sobriety date. So I'm over 2 years sober now. Feels very, very good. First year was not easy. Second year got much easier as I'm
Hmm.
into my third year now. It's like things are mostly a breeze. But
Yeah,
yeah, there's so much to say. So I
yeah,
do I do use a 12-step program personally. It's not for everybody, but it works for me. And I think that my drinking was a problem for a very long time before I admitted it, as
yeah,
with every alcoholic. And the thing with alcoholism is, like, as you know, it's a lifelong thing. You are, or many people believe I'm of this mindset that there is that strong genetic component. So you
yeah.
are an alcoholic before you even take your first drink. So I had my first
Yep.
drink when I was 17 years old, I think. I had half of a Smirnoff Ice at my buddy Martin's house. And I just loved it. I
Hmm.
still to this day remember that feeling and I loved it. And I didn't really like start drinking until I was probably 19. I mean, just 2 years later when I was in college and I was,
Yeah, yeah.
hanging out with some kids who were I was a sophomore and they were seniors. So of course, like they were able to, buy us all
Alcohol. Yep,
alcohol.
yep,
So
yep.
yeah, it was just one of those that, I had the classic college party scene. And, at the time it was like, okay, well, everyone else is getting wasted. So am I. Shortly after that, I got into the game industry, and the game industry is also a very, very party heavy culture.
Hmm.
So, I would go to these industry parties and I was getting wasted. So was everyone else. So,
Yep.
did not believe for a second that I had a problem. And took me a very, very long time to admit that I had a problem. And then finally I hit my bottom, as they say, which was just, like I said, 2 years ago, October, I was in a horribly depressed place. It was a funny thing because like I've always put so much value into my career and I love what I do and I have a ton of passion for what I do. And it's always been sort of at the center of my life.
Yeah.
Um, but I was in a weird phase where it was between the 2 seasons. It was between the 2 seasons that I was like full time, as you say, for the Call of Duty World League.
Yeah.
And I had already gotten my contract for the Black Ops 4 season. So I was basically like I had a couple months where I was just chilling. I had a couple months
Yeah.
where I was
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
the World War II season wrapped up. I didn't know if I was being signed on again for Black Ops 4 or not. So there was a few months of anxiety.
I'm sure.
But then after that, got my contract, and it was a few months of just nothing. I had no responsibilities, and I was just like drinking a ton and horribly depressed.
Yeah.
And other parts of my life, I'd been depressed because my career was not going well. This was a time that was what really kind of it was a big thing that stuck out to me was like, why am I feeling this way when I have everything that I want? Like the
Hmm.
only thing the thing I mainly wanted was a contract to host for Call of Duty again, and I had that. So I'm like, why am I still feeling this way? This is terrible.
Yeah.
So I've been calling the National Suicide Prevention Hotline couple times,
Yeah.
couple times a week for a few weeks. And then finally, October 22nd, woke up, called in, and it happened to be a man named Rick who answered. And there's this funny thing about alcoholics is that a lot of us are able to tell when other people are alcoholics before it ever comes up in conversation or
Yep.
before if we like never even mention alcohol or anything like that. And I had not mentioned, I was just like, told him a little bit about my situation, why I was, that I was feeling depressed and suicidal and everything. And he was just like, have you considered checking out an AA meeting? And I was like, how did he know? Like it was very weird.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I went that day and the rest is history.
That's fantastic, and I think that you touched on a lot of good points here because like with alcohol, like there's different types of alcoholics, and this is not a alcoholics. We're not going to dive into the nitty gritty of that, but with alcoholics, like there's for people, I can speak for myself, and it sounds like for you as well. Like in this situation, is that things have to get really really bad. Like
Yeah.
like it's weird. Like the more hopeless that person becomes, the better chance they have of doing it. Because someone like me, I was not like I'm like, how in the world are 12 steps written on a wall gonna save my life? You know what I mean? Like
Right.
get me to the good shit that does. You know what I mean? Like where like
Right.
so like, and especially with the whole God thing, and like it was just like, whoa, like I don't want. But at the same time, when I was 118 pounds, I had an eviction notice and I had 8 grand in credit card debt. That for me was my bottom, and like
Yeah.
for other people, they went way farther down the scale. But it doesn't really matter what the externals look like. Really, it's as long as it's how we really feel, the thoughts that we have, and how we consume whatever substance it is, that
Yeah.
really qualifies us as that,
Yeah. And I'm glad that you brought up how, because here's the other thing. I'm glad that you brought up how like everybody has like so, you know, I had a relatively, I would say, consequence-free
Mhm.
drinking career. Because like I said, I had this contract in hand
Yeah,
for this great job that I wanted. I
yeah,
had a good credit score, no debt,
mhm,
roof over my head, I had
yeah,
my health.
at everything, yeah,
Yeah, like there were no it's not like it's not like I had my last $5 and I was like, "Do I buy booze or food with it?"
yeah,
I was not in that situation, but it was still but it's kind of a reminder of like how things would have gone because the other thing is, because alcoholism is a progressive disease and
mhm.
it always gets worse, never better. It's like I'm so glad that I got out when I did. It could have gotten so much worse.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, it always can. The thing is, like, it always can get worse. And
Yeah.
for anyone listening who struggles with that, like, if you think that it can't get worse, go try it. I mean, I hate to say
Yeah.
that, but like, that's unfortunately what you need to do to go try that. And
Yeah.
that's a really hard truth and a really hard pill to swallow. No pun intended.
Yeah.
Like that was, but like that's like with me, I feel the same kind of gratitude because my substance was opiates and heroin, and like now on the streets today there are so many things that are being laced with fentanyl and being laced with these things that are killing people left and right. And it's like, and
Yeah.
for people who may not understand that, like you would think like, well, if you're being laced with something that's more powerful, like why would you want to do that? But the mind of someone like me is like, that's the stuff. Like I see people dying. That's the stuff I want to put into my body. You know what I mean? And that's just
Right.
the stark difference between like someone who is not does not have this disease and someone who does. It's like
Yeah.
give me the good shit. Like people are
Yeah.
dying. Give me that.
I love that thought that reminded me of something else, which just illustrates the way that normal people and addicts are different, very, very different, and that we
Mhm,
think differently is I remember, like, whenever I would see in a movie or like okay, so you know how you have a party, you're cleaning up afterwards, there's
mhm.
all these
Yes.
half-empty
Yep.
drinks, and I was usually not the one throwing a party, but if I would see someone cleaning up a half-empty drink, I would always think, "Oh my god, are you crazy? Finish that." Or, "What are you doing? You're putting that down the sink? You know
That's
you can
alcohol abuse
finish
right
that,
there.
right?" Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly. So
Yeah, I did that what and that's I think the challenge with people who either have loved ones of alcoholics or, like maybe somewhat afflicted with it. It's like that's the don't try to understand it because just like you can't
yes.
understand how we do this, we can't understand how y'all take just one drink and like leave a half a glass of wine on the table. Like
Yeah.
it's just it's we people need to stop trying to understand one another and just understand that like what type of help this person needs and where they can go get that right help because
Yeah.
and I'm sure you'll agree with me on this is that I love the amount of support there is on the internet, but when people do not have experience with it or truly understand like what needs to be done or what type of person is required to help that person, they're doing more harm than good.
Yes,
You know
and in fact, you see so many people accidentally enabling their loved ones
exactly.
because they don't realize, like, for instance, if you have a loved one who is constantly getting into trouble because of their substance abuse and you are constantly bailing them out, enabling doesn't have to look like providing an addict with their substance.
Yeah,
That's the very obvious form of enabling, but it
yeah.
can also mean, ensuring that the addict has no consequences and continues to have no consequences
Hmm.
because you think you're helping them. And it can be very, very hard to do because you don't want to cut off someone you love and leave them flailing. But in some
Yeah.
ways, that can be the most kind thing to do because then they'll hit their bottom sooner and seek help and
My
get sober.
my parents did the same thing. Like it was probably the hardest thing for them to do. They flew up to Colorado. They intervened on me. I told them that I did not want to go to treatment, so they took everything. They stopped. Like my parents. Like I was this big tough guy, but I also had my parents paying my rent and they had my car. So it's like I wasn't that tough. And so once they took both of those things, it only took 4 months. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I was a very unresourceful, drug addict. Like I didn't do well, and that was with living with my ex at the time. And her working 3 jobs while I was just this incel at home playing Call of Duty and smoking up all her dope. Like that's that. I mean, video games still found their way in there, but that's really what it took. And I'm never gonna sit here and say I understand what that's like because asking a parent to truly cut someone off, you may not know if you see him again.
Yeah.
Like that's a reality that they all have to face, and but that's also what is needed to potentially save your life.
Yeah.
You know, it's just
Yeah.
it's a wild thing.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, and I love talking about that.
Yeah.
It's
Same.
that common bond is yeah.
Yes. I so rarely get to talk to, like, other especially, like, when you it's weird, it's so exciting for me when I encounter, like, a fellow addict or alcoholic, like, out in the wild. It's,
Mhm.
like, so thrilling to me because,
It
like
is.
it's like I feel like I have, my AA friends and I talk to them, but it's like when there's someone else who I realize, like, "Oh my god, you're also, like, sober or you're also, like, an addict," or whatever, like, it's so exciting because you have that common bond that, like, normies just cannot and will not understand. Even if they can be understanding, but they will
Right.
never, like, fully understand.
Yeah, and that's okay. And it's not and if you're what we call a normie is someone who can take it or leave it. Like it's no offense or ill will or anything like that, but it's just like
Yeah.
there's yeah, I mean, it's just know that like, when people are trying like if you're trying to help someone, you giving someone advice, it doesn't it doesn't work cuz I was never going to listen to someone until they had told me their experience, they had walked like why should I believe you?
Yes.
I
Who
love
are
the
you to tell me what to do
yeah.
kind of thing.
Yeah, just steer me in the right direction. How about someone here could help? I've heard this can work. Like be that
Yeah.
person to facilitate the experience versus try to solve the problem.
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I love talking about that. And so, I want to talk about like growing up, like when it came to video games, when it came to your family support and like how you grew up, like was your family ultimately supporting of games or were they of kind of like that like, you know, finger
Yeah.
pointing?
They were more supportive, if
Okay.
anything, because I was a really good kid.
Yeah.
I didn't make any waves, didn't cross the line. Like, I
Hmm.
was a smart kid, I got good grades. I
Yeah.
mean, I was one of those naturally gifted kids where in, like, middle school, just, like, did not have to try and got decent grades. High school, started having to try very slightly, but still
Yeah.
managed to get straight A's with, like, I don't remember trying that hard. I mean, because I was in marching band and that took up a lot of time. So like that was where like so we had marching band practice every single
What'd you
day.
play?
I played flute. I started off in color
Nice.
guard my freshman year, and then I switched to flute my sophomore year.
I like it.
Yeah, and, so that took up a lot of time, so I feel like I don't remember honestly spending a ton of time on studying, but I still was able to, like, get pretty good grades. So, so my parents were like they didn't really care. Like, they would always be like, "Oh, stop playing games and get to your homework," or whatever, but as long as
Right.
my homework was done, they didn't care.
Got it.
They were pretty supportive and, for birthdays and stuff, they would, buy me the gaming consoles or the games and, they weren't like, "Oh, video games are bad, they'll rot your brain," or anything. My dad was a gamer in the '80s,
Ah,
before everything went 3D because he started getting, like, motion sick then, so but,
well, yeah.
so they weren't against it or anything.
Got it. Got it. No, yeah. I mean, because my story's a little bit different. Like, if it didn't fit the mold that my family had lined out for me, then it wasn't the right thing. Even if I was doing good,
Okay.
even if I was like,
Oh,
so it's like I like this. I like to have compare and contrast the two things. Like, we both can end up in the same spot or similar positions
yeah,
doing what we enjoy.
yeah,
But a lot of the reason why I created this podcast is because, like, if there's someone similar to my situation, they can understand that, like, not everyone grew up that way, and not everyone, and everyone can still make it out and do what they want to do regardless of that support
yeah,
system,
yeah.
you know? So, no, really cool. So 2011 is when you first started kind of like making your way into the gaming scene. So tell me, you had mentioned a company. What was that company? And kind of tell me what that was like for just starting out.
Yeah, okay. So when I first started out, I had a day job. I was working for JP Morgan Chase, and then I would go home in the evenings and create gaming content. This was like before Twitch. I
What
think
type of
just
content?
videos. I was teaching myself how to host. I would host videos.
Nice.
So I had like a crappy green screen and lighting and my Canon T2i,
Yep.
and I like taught myself how to use Adobe Premiere. And so I just created this like gaming news segment where
Mhm.
it had like it was I think I just called it like the gaming recap or something. It wasn't very I was never very like creative about like branding and stuff because my goal wasn't okay,
Yeah.
this segment is going to, get a lot of views. I was never intending for people to actually get their gaming news from me. I was doing it more so that I could learn how to host, build up footage for a reel, and then hopefully get noticed by a company that would pay me to do what I was already doing. I got very lucky because after about 6 to 8 months of doing my videos on YouTube, I started getting a few little offers of, hey, can you freelance for us? Basically, just do that same video you're doing, but at the beginning, say presented by this company instead of whatever you normally say. And then fortunately, one of those freelance offers turned into a full-time job offer. So
Oh,
in
yeah.
March of 2012, I started working for MMO Attack, and I have much to say about how shitty that company was. A terrible fucking company. I'm sorry. Can I curse on
Yeah,
this
you
podcast?
can. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Go for it.
Terrible, terrible company. I'm not gonna. I mean, it was just horrible. It was absolutely horrible. That's not what this is about, though. But I only worked there for 3 months. Like, so just to give you an like, it was this marketing firm out in San Diego where this blowhard of a president of the company goes, "Oh, what are video games? There's money to be had. Okay, let's invest in video games." So
Got
he
it.
hired me and one other person. He's like, "All right, you're the host, you're the video editor." Oh, because he wasn't even the video editor. He just held the camera. I
Oh
had to
my
do all the
god.
editing. So the reason I ended up quitting was because I'd worked there from March through June. So June was E3. We were in San Diego. E3's in LA.
Yep.
So they sent us up to E3, but of course everything was on a shoestring budget. They're like, we can't spend, etc. So we like took the train up to E3 really because it's a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We like
Yeah.
went up really because they didn't want to pay for a hotel any longer than they had to. So we went up like really early Tuesday morning, and then we were there Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then we took the train back Thursday evening
Yep.
instead of paying for an actual hotel.
Not yeah, yeah.
Um, it was and then we get back. So basically, he was like, "All right, go like set up a bunch of appointments with game developers and just shoot a bunch of interviews. Come back." Basically, our task was create content for MMO Attack's YouTube channel.
Mhm.
So we just shot as many interviews as we could. We filmed all day, all weekend. Came home, went into the office Friday, and I was like, "All right, so we have 24 hours of footage on our camera." So I was like, "Yeah, I'll spend the next few days like editing, uploading. We'll have some great content for this. I'm very pleased with what we did." And he's like, get all the, or my boss goes, "Get all those videos uploaded today." And I go, "Well, let me break it down for you. We have 24 hours of footage. So to even do a first pass and see what all is usable and like watch through and edit, it's going to take
24 hours.
24 hours or so." Like, I was like, even if you want to pay me overtime and you want me to come in this weekend, there's no way I can get it done today. And he was like, no, we can get it done today. I was like, no, I'm telling you, we can't.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, you have to. I was like, okay. So I went, I edited as many videos as I could, which I think was like 3. I think I got 3 interviews
Mhm.
edited and uploaded that day. And then I walked out of the office, took all my shit, and emailed him my resignation notice. I was like, I'm not doing this. I'm just
Right.
refusing.
Well,
And
yeah.
then I went on to host for MMO Bomb, which was a fantastic website. I was just freelancing for them. And then the day my first video for MMO Bomb came out, the guy from MMO Attack emails me and goes, "Hey, what you're doing for MMO Bomb is a breach of the non-compete agreement that you signed with when you started working for us. So we're going to be in touch after we review this with our legal counsel." And I said, "No, you fucking not," because A, I didn't sign. I was like, A, I did not sign this non-compete agreement. So give me a copy of the signed agreement that I supposedly signed. And B, California is a state that openly encourages competition between firms. So you cannot actually make your employees sign a non-compete agreement. You cannot make them sign a piece of paper saying that if they leave this company, they cannot work for a company in a similar field for a year or whatever. That doesn't exist in California. That
I
is
didn't know
illegal
that.
in California. You cannot do that in California. I was in California. This fucker knew that I wasn't from California. He knew that I was a 23-year-old from Ohio, and he was trying to take advantage of me,
Mhm. Yeah.
and it didn't work.
It didn't work. No, I mean, you had your wits about you though, you know? So it's
Yeah.
like, you're like, and because like I work for a company that helps people start businesses in California, and California is one of the craziest states to form a business, but there are some perks. Like I had no idea that that existed. All I know is that you have to pay $800 a year to exist in California as an LLC. You know,
Oh,
not even doing business. You can spend the entire year not making a cent, and you're still required to pay that within the first 4 months of your filing, and then every year going forward.
wow.
It's a good weather tax, but no, but that's really cool. I didn't know that. And one of the things that stuck out was literally right at the beginning of this story is that, and I think it's where a lot of people struggle. I really want to talk about this is that the videos you made were not for anyone else but you.
Yes.
And I think that is such a very unique way to look at that, especially back then, because it's just like you were teaching yourself. You weren't doing this for anyone else. You didn't give two shits about views. You didn't like it didn't. This was for you to build your skills up, to really build a portfolio to present to somebody else.
Right. I was never intending to become a YouTuber. I was
Mhm.
never, like, sure, if that happened, if people did watch and love my content and they
Sure.
subscribed and stuff like that, great. But it
Yeah.
was never my intention. I didn't even care if anybody watched them really, except for, the people that could potentially hire me.
Yeah.
So, so I got really lucky there.
Right. Well, I mean, but like I think it's luck, but I also think that when you really want to do something, the universe is going to meet you where you're at. Like
Yeah.
I really like I especially at this point in my career, like I don't really believe in luck anymore at all. Like I just like when you put forth the effort, and when you just show up even when you don't want to, like
Yeah.
that's where the good shit happens. Like
Yeah.
even when I feel lazy and I don't want to edit, like I'll like just do one piece, or I'll make sure I organize something, or I'll make sure it's like little things at a time to do that.
Yeah.
But it's I don't like, my thing is like I don't want to be a pro content creator, but like I like creating content on Twitch so I can figure out how to edit my shit and like learn how to use these things.
But that's great, and that's
Yeah.
such a great attitude to have because, like,
Yeah.
so many people here's the fuck of it all, is that so many people are like, "I wanna be a content creator. How do I do that?" And I go, "Create some content." And they go, "That sounds like a lot of work." And I go, "Well, if you don't like the work, then why are you pursuing this
Mhm.
career?" That's really inane. That's a really, like they like the idea. They like because they look at people like Ninja, Courage, Tim the Tap Man,
Yep.
who
Yep.
have made it big, who are literally making millions of dollars a year, who are famous, who have all the perks. And
Yeah.
it's that lifestyle that they want. They want the influencer lifestyle, but they don't actually want the work?
Right.
Like they care way more about the numbers than the actual content.
Yeah. And it's not and what what's funny, when I first got into this world, like when I heard that, I'm like, okay, then I can't give two shits about the numbers. Then it's only on the content. But it's like, no, it's like it doesn't mean you go to one extreme or the other. It's like numbers are important, but it cannot be the most important. You know what I mean?
Right,
It's
because I also disagree with people when a very common piece of advice I hear for, like, aspiring streamers is, hide your viewer numbers, don't even look at how many viewers you're getting, and
Mhm.
I kinda disagree with that. I think that has its place. I don't think that's necessarily bad advice, but I kinda disagree with that because, if you are wanting to do it as a career and you are wanting to, like, monetize it and you are wanting to, like, grow and everything, then the viewership is kind of important because it's a metric by which it is a metric, not the metric by which you can
Right.
judge your content. Like if you are getting more viewers, you're probably doing something right. But I don't necessarily think the converse is true. I think if you're not getting more viewers, you're not necessarily you're maybe doing a few things wrong, but like you might have great content, you just haven't really been discovered yet.
Exactly. And I think that's the whole, like, I think people get so, and I kind of did things backwards apparently to like what a lot of people like Harris Heller do, and like about like what like they started on YouTube and then they funneled to Twitch. You know what I mean? Like I started on Twitch and now I'm just now starting YouTube. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because YouTube actually does work to make your content discoverable. Twitch doesn't. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I've heard that too. They both and, they both have their place, and
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
it's just kind of, what works for you and what kind of content you like, if you like the live or if you like the pre-recorded, because they both have their advantages and disadvantages.
100%. And some people are more comfortable with one than the other.
Yeah, for sure. Some people are more comfortable with live stuff because there is less expectation of it,
Mhm.
being perfect. If you stutter, if you say something weird or whatever, you're not expected to be perfect. It's okay.
Right.
You can just kind of roll with it. Versus if you're recording a YouTube video and you like stutter, like, well, I can redo this, so I probably should.
Yeah, yeah, and I was actually talking with my last guest I had on here. He like I think we nailed, like, YouTube is so challenging, I think, and daunting for people because like there's so much more room for doubt. Like, because YouTube takes so much longer. Not
Yeah.
only does it take longer, but you also have to manage yourself through the entire editing process and creating process and script. And it's like there's
Yeah.
that much more reason why you shouldn't do it versus why you should. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's a wild thing, and I'm learning how to get that get that done myself. But want to hop forward to to like you worked for these kind of like MMO companies, these like weird kind of like websites. Then you jump to then you jump to like straight to no, you went to Dota.
Yeah, I went to do it. I've had kind of a weird, just
Yeah,
so I know a lot of some people, like some hosts and creators and stuff have had their like one niche that they've been like looking for and then they fall into it and then everything's great. And I was kind of, or I guess I should rephrase, I should say some hosts have their niche that they are kind of in and it's great. And
mhm,
I was always like looking for that niche. I
yeah,
kind of found it with Dota, but I never really had like, I didn't have like the success that I was hoping for there. I like hosted a few events, but worked for some dream hacks, but never really made it onto like the big leagues of like
yeah.
Dota talent or whatever. And then I kind of like had a few years where I was just sort of hopping from gig to gig. Like I was, I've had the great fortune of working steadily as a host and being able to support myself just as a host for
That's incredible.
since I left Curse,
Yeah,
which is really really great, but it wasn't always like, oh, then I hosted for this and I was on the broadcast talent team or whatever.
got it.
It would be a lot of like I hosted the Pokemon World Championships one year. I hosted the Tetris World Championships one year. Like those were fun events,
Yeah,
but it's not like, oh, that's Jess from Call of Duty or whatever. It
got
was
it.
just like, oh, she's just kind of a freelance host. She bounces around. Didn't really have anything that I was like known for, sort of.
That's cool though. And so yeah, I mean, it's good that like I won't say it's good because I don't know, but as a host or as a as a caster, as a host, whatever Activision gave you your title for now, like as that person, like why do you like do you think it's important to be more like to like host or cast a bunch of different games, or just to stick in your niche?
That's a really interesting question because I think that there are like a lot of reasons why I was really glad when, Call of Duty came to me and offered me a contract and it
Mhm.
was like and up until that point all of the work I had been doing, like I said, was kind of one-offs.
Yeah.
This was the first time a company had come to me and been like, "Hey, we want you on our first of all to be like on the actual official broadcast talent team for like an official pro scene,
Mhm.
and second of all, to basically have a contract that was more than one event long, because they were like, hey, we're going to bring you on for the first event of the season. If you don't completely suck, then we'll just hand you a contract for the rest of the season.
Gotcha.
So from December 2017 through, August 2018, you'll be working steady. And so that is like the huge advantage. So I have to say it's almost definitely better to have that niche, that one scene that you're in, but at the same time, the downside can be like, because it's steady work, you
Mhm.
get known for something, but then kind of the downside is, well, if it's kind of like how you want to like diversify your stock
Yeah.
portfolio,
Yeah. Yeah.
that one company third year doesn't bring you back. Like that's what happened to me. Third year on, you're known for a scene, you're full time hosting for them, and then they don't bring you back that third year. It's like, oh shoot, what do you do now, kind of thing. And I had this situation where, like after I kind of like quote unquote announced that I wasn't with Call of Duty anymore, because here's the other thing is I was even when I was with Call of Duty, I wasn't a full-time employee of Activision Blizzard. I was like
Got it.
technically still a contractor. I was
Yeah.
contract
Yep.
based. So it's not like I had been fired. I just, second year, They gave me a contract. Third year, they did not, But
Got
clearly,
it.
like, they still like me. They were still working with me. They just
Yeah.
didn't
Yeah.
bring me
Yeah.
back in this role. So, but it's still, it was, it was a big blow. And then when I kind of posted like, "Hey, I'm no longer with Call of Duty. They didn't bring me back, etc." I had all these companies reaching out to me and being like, "Oh, can we hire you? We didn't want to hire you before, or we thought we couldn't hire you before
Got
because we
it.
thought that you were full time with Call of Duty, that you didn't have the time to do anything else, and that you might have had some sort of contract in place, but that
Wow.
you're not allowed to." And I'm like, "No, no, no. I've been freelance, baby. Like, hire me." So, that is like, and that's kind of a rare situation because it's a little less common that you like won't get hired because companies think that you're exclusively with
Yeah.
a game or whatever, but it happens.
Yeah, I mean, the example that sticks out of my mind when you say that is like, like Lottie. Like I know Lottie through Halo. Like I'm a Halo kid,
Yeah,
and then I
yeah,
saw her jump to Call of Duty. I'm like, what a
yeah,
cool jump. You know what I mean? So now she's known for both, and she's well
yeah.
known in both communities.
Yeah, and she's doing both. I don't know what she
She's
did, but I know
killing
she
it.
was just doing some Halo recently, which she was thrilled about because that's her roots, and then of
Yeah.
course, she's also doing Call of Duty, which is so good for her. I love her.
Yeah, no, it was an incredible thing. Like, cause I my first event, I went to the 2018 New Orleans MLG event where they went old school and they did both a Halo and a Gears of War competition at the same time.
Oh, cool.
And
Okay.
so that was really where I first got to meet her. I got to meet Golden Boy. I got to really like kind of fanboy a little bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And get to see these people that I've watched for so long, like right in person. And I mean,
yeah.
it's a cool thing to know that like because like where I come from or like with the cloth that I'm come from is like if you've made a name somewhere else like casting is casting is casting, you know what I mean,
Yes.
like, and it may take a little bit of knowledge to learn a new game, but
Yeah.
it's but I want to ask, like, when you switched scenes, was there almost like an initiation period with the community, or was it kind of just like they welcomed you with open arms?
Yeah, that's a really fun topic to explore
Yeah.
because that always happens now to some degree, and this is going to have this is partially rooted in misogyny because to some degree this always happens when there's a new face on the scene. It's always, "Oh, who's that?"
Yeah. Yeah.
And they sometimes get some hate. "Oh, we don't like this person," whatever. But I don't think it's a surprise that it is much worse for women. And when a new woman appears on a scene, unfortunately, the thing that happens is they always go, "Oh, who's this girl? Why did they hire her? Oh, they're just pandering. They think that we're a bunch of nerds, so we have to look at a girl presenting.
Got
She
it.
doesn't know what she's talking about." I find that I feel like a woman's experience and knowledge is questioned way more often than Twitch chat than a man's is. So, and then the thing that also sucks is that when there are two women on a broadcast team, first of all, it's a very good thing. But second of all, Twitch chat inevitably begins comparing the two, which is
Ah,
so unfair and
it's
so
toxic.
just toxic, and it's terrible. So
Yeah.
with every like, so that kind of happened, with so yeah, the funny thing is happens with Call of Duty where, got a lot of hate, got a
Yeah.
lot of love as well, but
Yeah.
definitely got a lot of hate. Especially at first, but realistically, all throughout the whole 2 years I was there, got a lot of hate. And then as soon as I was no longer officially there, there were all these comments of, "Oh my God, where did Jess go? Why did Jess leave?" And it's like,
They were the same people.
yeah,
Yeah.
well,
Well, can
who
imagine.
knows? But they could have been. They could
Yeah.
have been. And then I saw those. It's always so funny because I saw a bunch of those comments of like, where did Jess go? And then other people are like, wait, you guys treated her like garbage while she was there. Why are you acting like you want her back now? You can't have it both ways. And I'm like,
Right.
yeah, exactly. Like, do you love me or not? I don't fucking know anymore. I love you guys anyway. I love Call of Duty, so I don't give a fuck what you think. But
That's right. Yeah, no, and I think you mentioned like having two women on the table. Like I think that's a fantastic thing. Like I think gaming needs so much more because like too much. I mean, honestly, man, too much testosterone in a room, especially with game. It's there. We need to have some of that. You know what I mean? We need
yeah,
to have some of that presence. I mean, like some of that strong assertive presence to like put these kids in or put these guys in check, these children in check.
yeah. Well, and
Um,
then also just like from a diversity perspective, and like
yeah,
going back to how we were talking about earlier, how there's a lot more women playing games, watching games. If like, okay, I'm not going to pretend that half of Twitch chat is women, because I know it's not there yet. But like
yeah,
when you're watching an event, like at least let's be generous. Let's say 20 to 25%
yeah,
at least are probably of the female persuasion. So isn't it kind of doing a disservice to them if you just have like a bunch of men presenting,
yeah.
like I don't know. It
Yeah.
just kind of feels like, and just I just always am pro diversity. So
Well, absolutely. I mean, I think you do know. You're being modest, but like, I'll call a spade a spade. No, but I think that's a fantastic scene. So I mean, we're talking about the like diversity. We're talking about all these all these things. Like when it comes to like what like is like what you're doing now. Is that like what you want to continue doing for your career, or is there another step that you're looking to like elevate yourself to?
that's something that I've thought about a lot because it's always been a struggle for me when people go like, because there were times when I had like career goals,
Mhm,
right?
mhm.
And not that I don't now, but it's kind of like, oh, I met a lot of those career goals and I'm very happy. So part of me goes, okay, well, keep doing what you're doing. It's fucking great. Just keep doing it. And then the other part of me goes like, okay, well, what's next? Should I be thinking about like something next?
Yeah,
But ultimately, at the end of the day, I feel like this pandemic has proven that you it's really difficult to plan for the future. You can, I'm not a religious person. I pretty much consider myself an atheist, but I love the phrase "man plans and God laughs"
yeah,
because
yeah,
I'll
yeah,
say man plans and the universe laughs
yeah,
because many times when I've had something planned, it didn't go the way I planned, and then something even better came along. And and in the pandemic, in general, my career has just been like going so well. Like it's been like since April or May is when it really started like kind of building up some momentum, and then starting over the summer is when I just got like slammed. I got
yeah,
really really busy, and like which is amazing. I
yeah,
never
yeah.
thought that was going to happen because right at the beginning of the pandemic I was like, "Oh my gosh, events are canceled. What am I going to do for work this year?"
Right.
And all of a sudden all these remote events, which is like, okay, well I already streamed, I already had, a little studio set up here. So all these companies that I would potentially be hosting for
Yeah.
in person are now just I'm just dialing in from the internet. And so it's just been like a huge blessing. And I guess to answer the question, like I just kind of keep doing things, and then whatever works, I do more of that.
I like that.
And
I
whatever
like that
feels
answer.
I do less of that, like I started a podcast and I've been having so much fun with that.
Yeah.
Because we talk about like mental health and gaming, and like I've been having a really good reception to that. All of my guests have been really, really awesome. So it's like, okay, well, that's going pretty well. I guess I'll keep doing that until it stops going well. Hosting and streaming has just been fun. It's been going really well. I don't have a set streaming schedule. I'm super disorganized with it, but I have a lot of fun. The people that show up to my streams say that they have a lot of fun too. So I'm like, I guess I'll keep doing that. I don't know. So, and it's hard for me to imagine what things are going to be like post pandemic because I have gotten really used to like hosting from home. Like I've gotten
Yeah.
the great pleasure of, I got to host in studio for the Cold War
I
multiplayer
saw
reveal,
that. I was really happy about that. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and it was such a cool thing because it felt really good to be in a studio again.
Yeah.
And then next week I'll actually be hosting the Call of Duty Endowment Bowl here in Columbus because Esports is
Nice. Hmm.
located here in Columbus. So
Hmm.
that's another like in
Oh yeah.
studio job. But other than that, I've been getting used to hosting from home and having everything I need, and like as soon as the camera's off, I can just go decompress and not have to
Right.
worry about like other people. So now I'm like, oh my gosh, when things go back to in person, it's gonna be an adjustment.
Yeah.
But it's also kind of hard for me to predict like what things exactly are going to look like. So I don't really know, I guess, where I'm going with my career, but I'm just along for the ride.
No, I like that answer because like I'm a huge Gary Vee fan. Like Gary
Yeah,
Vee is one of my favorite people in the world, and I love that he has attached himself to gaming. I just think that is some of the coolest shit ever. Like one of the dudes I looked up to the most, and like on one of it, I can't remember whether it was like an Instagram post or on his actual podcast where he was like, everyone asked me like how to like, everyone's like talking about a business plan and creating these business plans. He's like, what's your plan for someone in China eating a fucking bat and just and like like he's like, what happens to your plan then?
yes.
And I really love it because I've always like been brought up like you need to have a career path, you need to have a plan, you need to have this, and like I was actually talking about this with my therapist the other day, like my favorite scene in The Dark Knight Rises where it's just like when the Joker's converting Harvey Dent, and he's just like, if I say a little truck of soldiers is gonna blow up, no one panics because it's all part of the plan. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and then he like flips the gun and says, "Introduce a little anarchy." You know what I mean? And like that scene, just like it shook my whole body because it's just like, how can you plan for any of this? Like, and he did in his character at its core, he literally just did things and disrupted everybody's plans, and everyone freaked the fuck out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
That's a great reference. I'm gonna have to watch that movie again because I love that movie.
I learned something new about that movie, and honestly, that entire trilogy. I mean, every time I watch it, the Christopher Nolan just does such a amazing job of telling stories and foreshadowing, and just I know The Dark Knight is like it's great for so many reasons, but without the one before and the one after, it would be nothing. I don't know. I'm a huge fan of storytelling. I get emotional. Like, it's like I love movies like that.
Yeah.
No, but that's cool because it goes to show like when you continue doing what you love, opportunities will present itself, and like,
Yes.
you don't always know what you want. And I think it's
Yeah.
we put such a burden on ourselves of like trying to figure out like we need to have this timeline of like we need to know what we want to do. It's like how?
Right. Well, yeah, and so and I was raised similar, I think in that, like, my parents had a lot of strong
Yeah.
expectations of, like, you go to college, you get the
Yeah.
job. So there was some slight friction when I, chose gaming and pursued this career, and when I first left my job at JP Morgan Chase, because while I was in college, while I was, like, going through the, getting ready to graduate, going through the job interview process, my parents knew they knew that I wanted to work in gaming, and
Mhm.
so I think they were, like, just buttholes firmly clenched until the day I came home and I was like, "Yeah, I got a job offer from JP Morgan Chase." And then it was just like a collective unclenching and they
Yeah.
were like, "Oh, she's not doing the gaming thing. She
Right.
has a real job. We
Right.
did something right." Pat ourselves on the back.
Yeah.
And then a year later, when I was like, "Hey, I'm moving to California to take like a 2/3 pay cut and, host video games on the internet." I'm pretty sure they were shitting bricks, but
Yeah.
I mean, they were supportive. They were as supportive as they could be, I
Right.
think. But like they still have been it's been a hard thing for me to that's one thing. I'm so glad you mentioned your therapist because I have a therapist
Yeah.
too and it is so wonderful. It's one of the best things I've ever done. And one thing I've been working on with my therapist a lot is being okay with not knowing what happens next because my parents always had the mentality of like, okay, and which is a good thing. Yes, you want to save, you want to plan as much as you can,
Yep.
you want to have like your emergency fund. But my parents were what I've realized works best in my career because the way like hosting and stuff works, sometimes you know about an event months in advance and sometimes you get a call that like literally one time, and this was kind of an extreme circumstance, but years ago literally one time I got a message saying, "Hey, can you be in Bucharest, Romania tomorrow?" And I said, "Sure." And like that's an extreme example. It usually doesn't
Right.
happen like that, but it
It
literally
can.
sometimes does. So and I like I've realized that the times that I like having things lined up. I like knowing what's happening next. But the times that I don't is when some of the best things come up. And sometimes you just kind of gotta sit back and like trust the process and like let things happen. And it's really difficult talking to my parents about this sometimes because they're like, "Oh, what's next? What work do you have coming up?" And
Yeah.
sometimes the answer is like, "Well, I have one gig next week, and then I don't know. I have literally nothing on my calendar so far. But like that
Got
doesn't
it.
mean I'm not going to have anything on my calendar. That doesn't
Right.
mean I'm not working. It just means nothing has come up yet." And
Yep.
then also just the fact that like it's like when you're like, how, okay, like, not that I'm nearly as well paid as like an actor and actress, but they'll sometimes like they'll go do a movie, they'll do a commercial or whatever, and then they won't really maybe need to do anything for a couple months. And it's
Yeah.
kind of the same way. Like sometimes you get those really big gigs that are really lucrative that you're like, "Oh, I'm set. So if nothing comes up for a few months, I'm okay." And that's when my parents start like worrying. They're like, "What are you gonna do next?" And I'm like, "Mom, do I need to show you how much I made from this? Like, I'm okay. I
Right.
can pay my rent. I don't need to have everything lined up now."
Yeah, no, it's and I think that style that because they grew up in a different time than we did, like
Yes.
and like where this type of like spontaneous opportunity didn't exist, and to where to them this is like a baffling thing. Like it's not secure, it's not
Yeah.
safe, it's not, and there's this thing like this world's a big bad place, and you got to like plan and like take care of your own and like buckle, you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
that to me that just doesn't work with. I think honestly, even people who work normal jobs, like it just doesn't work today. Like
Right. Well, because the other thing is like you can like here's what's wrong with the mentality of like always plan for the future, always think about the future is like let's say you do have a great career at a company, you don't ever plan on leaving. Okay, well, what if the next day you get hit by a bus, break your leg, and like you are unable to do this job, or you can't make it into work, or you
yep,
have to take a leave of absence, or
exactly.
what if you fucking die? What if you
Yeah,
die?
yeah.
Then like all that planning is for nothing. That's why you kind of have to like live in the moment.
Hmm.
So
it's a weird place for people to live.
it's so weird,
It is.
especially, like as an alcoholic, I drank to escape the present.
I Yeah,
So
and I think that, since we're on the therapy topic, like I started actually doing therapy in March when this whole thing happened. I was like, you know what? I
nice.
get to deal with myself. Like now that we are truly in lockdown, and I choose to take this seriously, like where I try not to go out as much as I can. But
Yeah.
like now that I'm at home with my own self, what a perfect opportunity to really look at like what
Yeah.
I really don't want to look at, you know?
Yeah. Get in tune with yourself, get to know yourself, like
Yeah.
figure out what it is that you actually want out of life. That's been like the biggest gift
Hmm.
that therapy has given me is like teaching me what's actually important to me and
Yeah.
like what I need versus what I think I want.
Yeah. When I've adopted a lot of like my actions, even when, because I started streaming about 2 years ago, and started this podcast about, well, started having guests on in March, but like
Mhm.
I didn't realize until I went to therapy, I was taking actions besides the gaming thing. I was taking actions to appease my family and like what they think I should do. I was doing
Yeah.
everything for them and not for me.
Yeah.
And now, and that's why there was always such this conflict with streaming, because it was the one thing I was doing for myself, but it didn't really line up with what they were doing. So there was this
Yeah.
massive meltdown that I would always have, and it was just like,
Yeah.
why? And I'm like, this year I'm just like, oh shit, like I've literally lived my whole life not thinking of myself. Like,
Yeah.
I'm like,
And
what?
it isn't that wild
Yeah.
also when you realize that's another huge thing that I've learned that it took me a very long time to learn is that like your parents are human too. And
Yeah.
even though they're doing the best they can, like they don't necessarily know, they think they know what's best for you, but like you're an adult now. They can't really control your life. They can't tell you what to do. They don't
Yeah.
even necessarily, and there's a lot that they're wrong about
Yeah.
because they're from a different generation. They just don't know how things work. And so my mom, I remember my mom like for a while there was this friction because my mother loved to try to give me career advice and all of it was wrong.
Yeah.
And like I remember I was hosting this in particular one thing that really got to me was I was hosting an event that was um partially put on by ESPN Esports.
Hmm.
My
Hmm.
mom got all excited and she's like, "Oh, make sure you do a good job because, then ESPN might want to hire you again, etc." And I'm like, "Mom, like of course I want to do a good job. I don't give a fuck about of course I'm going to do a good job no matter what, first
Yeah.
of all. Second of all, I know literally everybody who works for ESPN Esports.
Yeah.
Like they already have an opinion of me. Clearly it's a good one. Like
Right.
and third of all, they're not even the ones that hired me for this event. It's running on their Twitch channel, but a completely different company is the one that hired me.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter. Like, and it was just, and then 3 months later, ESPN Esports shuts down.
Yep.
So I'm like,
Thanks.
she's so, I get it. She's so well meaning. She wants me to be successful. And in her mind, this is the best way to support me. But like,
It's
it's
not.
also just kind of like it's one of those and for a very long time, I would just, like, listen to everything my mom said, and, I grew
Yeah.
up thinking, like, "Oh, she's my mom, she created me, so she must
She's
know what
right.
she's doing,"
Mhm.
but there's a lot that she just doesn't know, and especially when it comes to, like, gaming and stuff, so
It's kind of like what we talked about earlier with alcoholism.
yeah.
You know, it takes a lot of self-awareness, and I think a lot of the spiritual journey, a lot of the present moment stuff wasn't really a popular thing back then either. So like
Yeah.
to really understand and have the awareness around like, okay, who is my child? How did they learn? Like, what do they do? Like, can I truly help here does my advice actually help them or does it hurt them? You know?
Mhm,
Because for me it was the opposite. For me it hurt, but I was always too scared to oppose that. I was always too scared
mhm.
to say no, because they're my family. I'm the only child, like
Oh,
I'm the
yeah.
mama's boy, and I'm, like, and
Yeah.
so it just there was always this massive conflict that I finally gotten to address through through the therapy work, and it's as startling as it is, it's also very freeing. I'm like,
Yeah.
wow, like I'm 28 and I'm now understanding who Kyle is.
Yes. Yeah,
What a beautiful
yeah.
thing.
Yeah, well, and here's another thing that I've heard other alcoholics say that when you start drinking, the age you start drinking is the age that you really stop emotionally maturing, and then that doesn't
Yeah.
really pick back up again until after you get sober. Have you found that to be the case with your recovery as well?
Good question. So for me, like I started really going heavy around 17. I took my first drink when I was 15. That's the
Mhm.
first time I got drunk, but then I didn't really pick back up till I was 17. But I would say so, like,
Mhm.
but not really when I got sober. Because even though, and I like that we're on this topic, because even though I got sober and I'm in AA and it solves a lot of problems, there's still a lot of stuff that AA doesn't solve. You know,
Yes.
and that
There too.
and as a and I was brought up very disciplined and very rigid in the AA community, which it worked for a certain extent, and it worked
Okay.
because like I needed to hear some of that stuff, and
Yeah.
I could not truly trust my own thinking. I truly
Yeah.
could not do that. So in a sense, I needed that, but it's taken almost 7.5 years of being sober to finally like break down those walls. You know, the rigidness of like my view of AA and like what can work and what doesn't work. And now, not just being sober, but I'm 28 and now I still feel like I'm kind of 16 or 17 years old again. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so in a sense, yes, it didn't happen right when I got sober. It honestly took me a long fucking time to even in
Yeah.
sobriety to get to this point, you know,
Yeah.
where
Well,
I
because
was,
you kind of have there's a lot you have to do first to
yeah,
kind of recover.
yeah,
There's a lot that like the further out you get from abusing
the
substances,
drink,
like
yeah,
the more you're able to like actually work on yourself. Because right at first, when you first get sober, it's kind of a matter of like literally just do not put drugs or alcohol into your body.
yeah,
Every minute of every day is spent thinking about not getting drunk.
hmm,
And then after a few months, it's less of a struggle of, okay, well, I know I trust myself not to relapse today or whatever. And then you
yeah,
can actually begin like the healing process. It's
yeah,
less of a, like you're less in crisis mode and you're
yeah.
more in healing mode.
Well, yeah, and it's like, and I've had an experience with this thing this power, whatever you want to call it, like that's recreated my life, and therefore I don't have to worry about it anymore. Like, and actually
Yeah.
trusting that, like, because even when I work with a few guys who are like, I don't know, am I doing this right or am I doing enough? I'm like, bro, the fact that you're just calling lets me know that you're like you're doing the right thing, and so you have nothing to
Yeah.
actually worry about.
Do
You
you,
know,
do you sponsor people?
I do, yeah,
Oh, good for you. I don't
yeah,
have anyone because my policy is I'm not going to volunteer to sponsor. If somebody asks me to be their sponsor, I
yeah,
will accept. But if somebody needs a sponsor but is not
yeah.
asking me, I'm not going to volunteer.
Got
But
it.
I'm so happy for you. That's really good.
It's honestly, if you can, it's one of the best. I mean, it's honestly one of the. It's like, to me, it's like the dope of the program.
Mhm.
I there's nothing better than seeing like someone, than the light come on. You know what I mean? Than like
Yeah.
watching and hearing and like watching them walk
Yeah.
through this, because like, and it's not based on my advice. Like, my role
Yeah.
as a facilitator. Like, I am
Yes.
there to facilitate an experience for you, but it's your experience to have. You know?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I have a friend who I consider myself almost like an unofficial sponsor of. I don't
Yeah.
think of myself that way, but sometimes
Yeah.
because like he tells me that I'm the reason he stopped drinking. Like because he stopped drinking about 6 months after I
Mhm.
did, and I just saw a lot of. And I don't even. It's funny because it was I was 6 months sober. So this was a year and a half ago at this point. So I don't remember. I barely remember. But like once in a while, I'll text him and he'll tell me like he's like, yeah, thanks, you helped me get sober. Like you're the reason I stopped drinking. And I'm like, wow, like that's putting a lot of power on me, like
Yeah.
giving me a lot of credit. I'm like, no, no, like seriously, you're the reason you stopped drinking, but I'm glad that I'm
Played a
glad I
part
was
in
able
it.
to help.
Played a
Yeah,
part.
yeah,
You played a part,
yeah.
because ultimately it's up to him. You know,
Yes.
it's ultimately his decision, just like it was yours, just like it was mine. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and it's really like, it's not the decision to just like say no. It's just the decision to do something about it. It's the
Yeah.
decision of like, okay, this fuck this, like what needs to be done, and really internalizing it. It's not just like, oh man, let me just try something, or like, it's like, no, I'm like, and when like there's a moment where and you have that just like uh that moment of clarity that just stops you in your tracks. You're like, all of a sudden the fog parts for a little bit, and you're like,
Yeah.
I have this opportunity this window of opportunity to take action, or I don't. You know?
Yeah. And for you, for me, since getting sober, I've had many like, obviously I've questioned it a lot and I've
Yeah,
had a
yeah,
lot of moments where I'm like, man, a drink sounds nice, obviously.
yeah,
And a lot of moments where I'm like, is this going to be the rest of my life? Am I pledging not to, and then I remember, no, I woke up today, said I'm not going to drink today. And that's all I have to do,
yeah,
first of all. But like, oh God, I don't even remember where I was going with that. I feel like I had this really
yeah.
like poignant thing that I was going to say. And oh yeah, no, I remembered it. I've had many moments where I have had those moments of clarity where I'm like, yeah, I'm doing the right thing. Like
Mhm.
so many experiences where I'm like, yeah, I think that was my higher power telling me like, good job.
Yeah,
You're still doing it. You're doing it right. So for all those moments of doubt, like I'll have a moment of clarity that comes in and just wipes out any of those doubts.
yeah, and it happens all of a sudden.
Yeah,
It happens all of a sudden. So I want to start wrapping things up here. It's
sure.
been an absolute no. I love these. It's been an absolute pleasure. So I like to wrap these up with like, if you could give one piece of advice to either either someone who's just starting off in the scene, someone who wants to be in the same position you are, or just women in gaming in general, what would that be?
Yeah, my main one thing that comes to mind is which is a good life lesson as well, but especially has really helped me in being a woman in gaming and being like on camera in gaming is that you can't please everyone.
Mm,
And like I think there's a saying that's like you could be the sweetest peach in the what do
in the
peaches
orchard,
come
orchard.
bushel orchard? Yeah,
Yeah,
you could be the sweetest peach in the orchard. I didn't remember how peaches grew. And you're still gonna meet someone who doesn't like peaches.
right.
And it's true. It's like you could be doing the best you can at your job, and there's still someone who's just not gonna like you. And honestly, says a lot more about those people than it does about you. And an example that comes to mind is I do a series for GameStop, which has been absolutely phenomenal to do. And the series is about like how to get into hosting, casting, and content creation. And a couple weeks ago, one of my segments aired, and I've been getting a lot of really kind feedback, which is awesome. And then I had someone tweeting at me, and they said, "Your segment for GameStop is actually so fucking cringe. Stop policing streaming, you weirdo." And like I just and it was just funny to me. Sorry, my dogs have something to
Yeah,
say about
I was gonna
that. And I just thought it was really funny because I was like, well, I'm not policing streaming. I'm literally doing the opposite. I'm trying to get more people into it. And I'm trying to do that by telling them how and how to be a better streamer and how to start streaming to begin with.
right.
And I went to this person's Twitter profile, and their previous tweet right before that, which had been like a few hours before, was something about like, man, I hate myself so much. I really wish I could just kill myself, but I don't have the guts, or something
Mm,
like that. And I was like, oh, so that wasn't about me at all.
yeah,
That person does not actually think my series for GameStop is cringe. They do not actually think I'm policing streaming. They're in a really bad place and they don't know what to do. They don't have the sort of emotional maturity to do something about it or
right.
to figure their shit out. So they're lashing out at other people. And I just happen to be, maybe that person was in a GameStop and saw me and it pinged that thing in their brain where maybe
Yeah,
their own content is failing, maybe their own stream isn't doing well and they're getting upset about that. And so the easiest way for them to deal with that is to try to take it on someone else.
yeah,
So what I did is I even just tweeted back at that person and I said, I hope you hate yourself a little less after tweeting that. Kind of being
yeah,
sarcastic,
yeah,
kind
yeah.
of being like, I see that you're in a bad place. I see that you think this is helping, but this is just the opposite, you know? And they actually deleted that tweet and DM'd me and was like, I apologize. I'm in a really bad place. And that's why I said that. And I was like, dog, I know. I can tell, but I
Yeah,
forgive you.
yeah. Well, no, that's a cool thing. If people aren't, people aren't, they just don't want to wake up and be assholes. There's a lot that's going on. We are dealing with so many things as human beings, whether you're an alcoholic, whether you're a drug addict, whether you're just in a shit, whether you got depression,
Yeah.
whether you suffer from anything, like everyone
It's
struggles
hard
from
to be a
something.
human.
It really is. And we didn't ask for this.
Yeah, I didn't ask to be born. And then 32 years later, I gotta pay rent.
Right.
I gotta feed myself. I gotta do laundry.
Yeah.
Like, Mom, come on.
Yeah, we didn't ask for any of this,
No.
No, I love that. It's you drive a really good point. I really enjoyed having that. Where are you the most active? And where can people find you? Where do you want people to go check out the most?
Yeah, the main things would be, I guess, probably just Twitter and Twitch.
Mhm.
My Twitter is just my name at Jess Brohard. I tweet a lot of really, I don't know, I meme a lot basically. I'm rarely ever serious on Twitter. And then twitch.tv/Jess. I stream almost every day. Like I said, I don't have a streaming schedule. And then here's the other thing, I'm very forgiving with myself because like if I say I stream most days, if I go 3 days without streaming and I see my subscriber count drop, I don't beat myself up. I say, that's not why I'm doing it.
Right.
Hosting is my job. If I get subscribers, great. But if they unsubscribe, whatever, I can still pay my rent.
Exactly. No, that's dope. And you have a podcast. Where can people find
I
that as well?
do. Yeah. So the podcast is called Happy Hour, spelled HAPPI hour. So the website for that is happyhour.io. So HAPPIHOUR.io. That has a little blurb about the podcast. It has the episodes and all that good stuff.
Fantastic. I'll grab the link from you and I'll put that in the show notes below so that way people
Sweet.
can find that. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks.
So fantastic having you on, Jess. This has been a treat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. This was really, really fun. And I really loved getting into all the alcoholism addiction stuff. Like that just does not get talked about enough. I think a lot of people when they want to cause like other times when people are like inviting me to be on podcasts or anything like that, I think they have this idea of like, they're like, "Is it okay?" They're like, "I hear you're an alcoholic. Like, we don't need to get into that." I'm like,
Yeah.
"No, no, but can we though?
Please.
Please, genuinely." Because like the more it gets talked about, the more it gets destigmatized,
Yep.
and the more people realize that like alcoholics are just walking around among us, and you might not even know
Yep.
because they don't look like you. Honestly, I'm looking at you right now, Kyle. You do not look like a heroin addict. So I never would have known until except you say it. You put it right on your Twitter profile. Like
Yeah.
you are out there with it, which is great. I think more people should do that.
Yeah, yeah. And I trust me, I used how I quote unquote looked to my advantage as a heroin addict, because no one ever thought so. No,
Yeah.
no one ever thought so. So I did it. But
Yeah.
you know, let's definitely schedule a follow up for sometime later because like I think this would be a
Yeah.
fantastic opportunity. If there ever is an opportunity for me to come talk about mental health on yours, I would absolutely love the opportunity to do that.
Yeah, that would be great.
Fantastic. Well, hey, I'll let you get back to your Skyrim, and you have a great
Thank
rest
you.
of your day.
Thanks, you too.
All right.